Hi, everyone. If you are joining us live, it's Friday. Yay. And if you are not joining us live, do not worry. That means you're doing something, and this is a better time for you now to be watching, and we're thrilled about that. If you are not joining us live, you can also get your questions answered by our expert. That's the number one question that I get. And so just any question that you have, both during our live now, or if you're watching at a time that's not live for us, just go ahead and add them in the comment section. And that way we will make sure that we reach out to Michelle and get the expert answers that you crave. So by way, I am Ashley Koff, registered dietitian and CEO of the Better Nutrition Program. We offer practitioner-developed better nutrition assessment tools so that practitioners and patients can assess their current nutrition to figure out what's better and what's not better. And one of my favorite areas in this space is heart health. Our assessments, we created those a few years ago with a couple of different experts. And one of the things that they said is, wow, this nutrition information that people are getting in the name of heart health is not better for their hearts, and it probably isn't better for the rest of their bodies. So we have an amazing expert with us today. And before I introduce Michelle, I am going to just remind you all that I define expert, as in the Better Nutrition Expert interview, as somebody who has the experience, has reviewed the science, has access, continues to stay up to date on the science, but then also applies it. So when you apply it, when you have that human component, you know that just having a right answer isn't always better. And so it takes an expert to actually help somebody create the changes that are better for them. And sometimes it's not changing things, so that's even way better. All right, so without further ado, I was just talking to Michelle Routhenstein, who is our expert today, joining us from New York. I was asking her how she does it with a 1 and a 3-year-old. So very, very busy woman. But we're so thrilled to have you here today. And, you know, I thought I would start off, you have a couple of different letters after your name. And so I would love to understand your pathway towards becoming an RD, but also what CDE and CDN means, Michelle.
Oh, great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So MSRD, CDE, CDN, I've always really loved science. I wanted to be a doctor, and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor so I can help people and help with preventing disease and all of this. And when I went into the hospital setting, I just saw like these people with diabetes who were getting their legs amputated, who are losing their vision at such a young age. And it really, I felt really bad for them. Like, could this be prevented? Is there anything we could have done to stop this? And the doctors kept pushing medicine, but they didn't really look at the lifestyle component of it. And that's when I was like, this could have been prevented with lifestyle medicine. And I just had a passion. I was like, this is my dream. I need it. Like, this is my mission. I want to prevent chronic disease from happening and also manage chronic disease so that it doesn't, those complications won't have to arise. So that's when I decided to get my RD. I did my dietetic residency. I got my master's, which is my MS. And then I did more education for my certified diabetes educator, which is my CDE, and my certified dietitian nutritionist certification as well. It just makes the New York State overlook all of your qualifications to make sure that, you know, you have all the background that you need to actually help these kinds of individuals.
I love that. Wow. It's so important. And one of the things that we're going to dive into is why that's so important. You know, in medicine, when you go to see a doctor, you might see a heart doctor or a kidney doctor. Growing up, my dad's a urologist. So, you know, we've got the kidney side of things, and my brother's a pulmonologist, and we have the lung side of things. But thankfully back in pediatrics, we just have like the pediatric, right? We just, obviously people can specialize, but you know, we tend to parcel people into areas based on what we see as affected. And one of the things that you very astutely in our pre-interview questions focused on was, you know, why are my kidney patients not getting heart health advice when heart disease is the number one killer of those patients with kidney disease? So help someone understand, if they are a practitioner or a patient listening right now, which is sometimes tough too, but we're gonna speak to both audiences. Help them understand how you sort of assess what somebody needs nutritionally at that starting point.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of times people are like, they quickly Google, like, what should I eat? I have this, and this disease. And we look at it very independently. So we're looking at kidney disease. We're looking just at heart disease. We're just looking at diabetes. And what ends up happening is sometimes the information we give or we see online for diabetes is not very good for our kidneys, or not very good for our heart, or not very good for our liver, or so forth. So we need to be able to look at everything together and not in isolation. Our body works together. So I'm very big on looking at the whole person and really seeing what does that person need at that time. So everyone is different ages, different, has different DNA, has different past medical history, has different genetic history. They have different nutrition requirements at different stages of their lives, whether they're pregnant, whether they're elderly, whether they are just getting over a cold, whether they're, they followed a certain diet, or they have beliefs that they want to be vegan, or they want to be vegetarian, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So how I assess people is I sit with them for a good hour, hour and a half, and I really get to know them. I find out, what's their lifestyle like? Are they eating at restaurants all the time? Are they following a keto diet? Are they following a paleo diet, a vegan diet? What do they like? What are their reasons for it? As a dietitian, I'm not here to say, this is the best diet, this is the worst diet. It's really, let's see what you're working with and what your belief systems are, and let's make sure that you're getting all the vitamins and the nutrients that you need for you to thrive. Because a lot of times, when you go to a doctor, your blood tests don't really show your and mineral deficiencies, and if they even test it, it might not come back right away that you're deficient. But if you're not fueling yourself with those proper foods, you will become deficient, and maybe you're getting headaches, but you just think it's normal, and it's not normal. So it's a very big assessment, and really figuring out who you are at that, and as you as an individual, and who's your support system. Are you going to cook? Is it realistic to cook? I don't want you to reach your goals in like 2 weeks and then that's it. I want you to do it for the rest of your life. So it's very much about a realistic plan that's good for you. A lot of times also someone who has a family history of heart disease, a family history of heart attacks, a family history of chronic kidney disease, they should be a little bit more even precautious about what foods they're eating, because it's an environmental thing that we can make sure that we can help prevent or try to prevent, versus just let it happen because it's in my family. It's not inevitable that you'll get it just because it's a genetic component to it.
Yeah, I love that. And so much there. And that's, one of the key things I wanted to point out for people listening is that it really is that, obviously, and I'm in the business of a nutrition assessment tool. So it is in that assessment phase that we learn so much about you. And so that's part your responsibility and part your practitioner's responsibility. But you always want to start from that point. I like to describe it as like turning on your location settings before you try to hire Uber or Lyft. Like, we got to know where you are, today. And today we have Michelle here to talk about preventative health because, as she said, she was passionate. She saw these people already in the hospital. I think this happens to so many of us in our clinical and our residencies. We're like, wow, if we could have actually had interaction and spent time with these folks when they were younger, or, just at a different point, could we have helped them along the way? So one of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of prevention is, while there is no one set diet, we've really made a mess of a number of different areas. So, cholesterol, diabetes and sugar, carbohydrates. So I'd love to go through some of these things as it relates to prevention. And then we're going to dive into a couple of specific nutrients that I want to ask you about. So when we're talking about prevention, are there one or two things that you think across different dietary platforms just make sense that you would say, hey, everyone, in the name of preventative heart health or preventative heart disease, heart healthy nutrition, we should be focusing on doing more often?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of the biggest things I find with my clients that they don't do is they don't drink enough water. Mm-hmm. A lot of people just, it's not in their routine. They don't feel thirsty. It's not actively put in. And a lot of people don't realize that when you're dehydrated, your blood actually gets stickier, and it can increase, it can make it harder for your blood to pump throughout your body. So I'm very big proponent about water. I think another big thing is sodium content is everywhere. When I create plans for my clients, I'm looking at all these restaurants that they're going to, and even like salad bars that you you would think, it's so low in sodium, have like 2,000 milligrams of sodium. Even places that have, the perfect plate of 2 carbs and a veggie and a whole grain, the whole thing could be very, very high in sodium. And I think a lot of people, get kind of shun away blood pressure a lot because they're like, I don't feel it and I don't need to be aware of it. They don't feel it, so they're not as aware of it, so to speak. So it's super important that, we address that, because I've seen people not know they have high blood pressure, come to the hospital and are on end-stage kidney failure with going on dialysis because they just never took care of it. So I think that those two are big ones. And I also think that, I don't like giving, everyone dietitians like eat more fruits and veggies. And I love that, but it depends on it's not I'm particular about which fruits and veggies, but depending on your past medical history, depending on, if you have chronic kidney disease, there might be certain fruits and vegetables that I would be more inclined to recommend versus others. And I think that's a very, everyone needs that push to a fiber intake. I think also carbs are getting a really bad rep these days. Everyone's like, oh, no carbs, I can't eat any carbs. But there's been so much studies showing how whole grain consumption reduces a lot of chronic diseases. So I think it's important that we don't let go of that. I'm not saying go eat white bread. I'm saying, brown rice, quinoa, bulgur. A lot of these things are really good for you. And I think a lot of people are not having them in their diet, and it's causing a lot of nutrient deficiencies that people don't realize.
I love that. I did a segment yesterday on oat milk, and I was like, well, first of all, like like when you turn your oats into the milk, a lot of times you lose all of that fiber. And it's not like oats are so crazy high in fiber, but they're a good source. And then the second part is some of them have like 4 and 5 and 6 teaspoons of added sugar in there, So I think we really have to, when people hear grains, they're like somebody said to me, like, oh, well, I drink oat milk. I was like, yeah, when we're talking about eating a whole grain, that, that part's not happening. So if you want to use your oat milk, you can use it as a base for your overnight oats, which gets you in the prebiotic fiber, which I learned in another expert interview. So there are ways to make all of this happen deliciously, which is where I want to go next. And one of the things that I think is really, you were saying that stickiness when you're dehydrated, that your blood can be more sticky. One of the other areas that we see as really problematic from a heart health standpoint is calcium as arterial plaque, right? And that formation. And so this calcium magnesium balance, it struck me as you were saying, you were talking about how labs don't necessarily tell you if you have what I call a conditional deficiency, like the conditions of your diet and your lifestyle mean your body's not getting enough of this. And magnesium is one of those. So talk a little bit about, because it seems like, especially for women, everybody's getting thrown on a calcium supplement, or you might even just be thrown on a magnesium supplement. But what do you recommend from a heart health standpoint?
In terms of calcium and magnesium?
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. I think it's really looking at, are you getting it from your food? It's very easy to get it from your food. Even if you don't have dairy, there are a lot of sources that have calcium that are beyond dairy. And same with magnesium. I think a lot of people just aren't thinking about them. So a lot of my patients are like, I always crave dark chocolate. I'm like, a lot of times you're magnesium deficient. And when I do a food journal review and I see, I'm like, you're not eating any magnesium rich foods. So I think that it is an issue that people are not getting their magnesium into their daily intake, and being able to add that. So like nuts are a great source of magnesium, and I don't think a lot of people are having enough of those, but in moderation. I'm not saying have a bag of nuts. You can get it with an ounce of nuts a day. But I'm very big about looking at all those nutrients. So definitely. But calcium in particular, I think a lot of people, because the dairy industry has been pushing calcium, a lot of people think that's if I don't eat dairy, then I need a calcium supplement. And I'm not a big calcium supplement pusher, just because there's been a lot of research showing negative effects with supplements, especially calcium-based supplements. And I'm also big, when you're having a supplement, if that's the only way you can get it in, to really double check where it's coming from, because they're not regulated, and you really need a third-party review to make sure it actually has what it says it has in it.
Yeah, I remember first learning that several of the most popular calcium supplements on the market were made from limestone, and I was like, okay, like something my body and my kidneys definitely doesn't need is limestone. Like that's not, like, no part of my being, resonates with that. So yeah, I think the quality is such a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also just speaking to that is a lot of, you can go on Amazon and order any supplement in the world that's not regulated. You don't know what you're putting inside your body, but if someone has stage 3 kidney failure, which sad to say, most people don't even know they have it because their doctor doesn't really even tell them with their blood review, you could be doing a lot more damage than good by taking a lot of supplements. I have seen client after client bring like 10 or 15 supplements that they take. And I'm like, these are all interacting not well together. And they could be causing you to have some kidney failure too, because it's a lot to go through. Or even you could see on their labs, their liver enzymes will go up from it too. So I'm very big about, try getting it from your food because that's where the research really holds.
Yeah. And, something that I've heard you say a couple of times that I want to pick up on, your doctor didn't tell you. And I think one of the things we have to be in this era is just way more engaged. I find that our dietetic patients, people who come into us, most of the time too, especially because they're either that while their insurance might cover some, they're paying out of pocket or that piece. So they're like, I have all these questions. I have all this time with you. I want to get all these answers, so I find that they're typically prepared. And of course, when they're using assessment tools coming in. But what would you suggest that so that you're not finding out later stage on kidney health and things? What are some of the key questions to ask your general doctor or your cardiologist so that you start to have an ongoing conversation so that you can get ahead of some of this?
That's a great question. So I'm very big about being patient advocates. I spend a lot of my time with patients going through their blood review and explaining what this means, what does that mean, going through their medications, explaining everything of that, and explaining why I'm recommending one nutrition recommendation. Times the people are like, well, the doctor is in such a rush, I didn't have time to ask. And I'm like, but this is your health. And you need to say, doctor, I see you say my blood tests are okay, but do you mind reviewing, like, what does EGFR stand for? What does, BUN stand for? Ask them these questions. Know what were your numbers last year? What are your numbers today? Because it's a trend. And if you see that, wow, my EGFR, which is estimated glomerular filtration rate, wow, that went down 30 points. That means your kidneys are not filtering your blood the right way. And you need to then ask the doctor, I realize that this number went down a little bit. Can you explain it further? Because you really, we have these tight parameters of, I want my calcium to be between this and this, and my albumin to be between this and this. But what is it related to you? What is your baseline? It's kind of the same as blood pressure. I have very low blood pressure. And so if I know if my numbers go like 20 points higher, it's still within normal. It's not normal for me. And so you need to know what is your normal and and if it goes out of your normal, let's have a discussion, because some doctors aren't looking at your trends because they're so busy. It's more you need to be looking at your trends and then asking your questions of why is this like this? If you see if you see your cholesterol trending up, it might still be normal, but hey, what is different? Am I changing my diet? Did I just try the keto diet? Did I just try this? Did I just try that? And assessing it, because you need to be the one on top of it, because a lot of people think, the doctor's taking care of me. The doctor's taking care of thousands of patients. You need to be taking care of you.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, and having that check sheet of of looking at each labs and saying like, hey, what trends do we want to look at? I have so many patients that over the years have said, I've never asked my doctor for my labs, or I get this, it's like we're kind of waiting. I think in some ways we're all like going to the doctor the way that we like turned in a term paper when we were kids, just waiting for the like, oh, good, it's done. We're like on to the next thing, and realizing that it's actually an ongoing story, and it's the story of us. And so we want to pay attention to things. And so one of the areas that we want to pay attention to is this craziness around cholesterol. So how do you as a practitioner take on cholesterol in terms of, sugar, fat, just what does it mean for you, not eating only plants? Like, how do you help people navigate through the cholesterol maze?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. It's not a very straight answer, to be honest with you, because we're looking at your total cholesterol, we're looking at your LDL, your HDL, your triglycerides. Some doctors will take like even LDL particle size and density, so that way you can see which one's more atherosclerotic versus not. So the more the more information you have about it, the better. But I also take it from a genetic standpoint. I think that it's really important to be able to assess and know your numbers. And some doctors are very pushy on statins, others are not. And the first line of treatment is lifestyle medicine. It can come down, but it also depends on how motivated you are. Are you motivated to bring it down with your diet? Because there's been a lot of research showing that you can, but it's in a matter of, are you motivated enough to do that? Because it is a little restrictive. I'm not going to lie to you. It is a harder thing to do, but it is possible. So it depends on how you want to deal with it. A lot of people that work with me, I mean, as a dietitian, I'm not titrating any statins or telling people to go off of it, but I've had people stay on the statin and then change their diet, their numbers came down significantly, and then they got off the statin. And so I like that pathway a lot more. It's same with blood pressure, same with a lot of things where, you have to show the doctor that you can do it with diet. Once you show and you get off, you can maintain it with that and feel confident going forward.
Yeah, and to have a path towards maintaining it, or at times in your life, if you know you're not going to be able to, sometimes life changes and we can't adhere to the same protocols that we thought we were going to. So it's just important to have that dialogue, but not just think of the medication as the solution. So I think that part is so important.
That, but also, there are certain circumstances like familial hypercholesterolemia where you might have to be on a statin or maybe a lower dose statin, depending on how strict you want to hold your diet. So it really depends on the case-by-case basis. I hate being like, oh, you can be statin-free versus not. It's really a conversation that needs to be happened with the doctor and on a patient-by-patient basis, because statins can save lives. People have statin and it can cause other. So I think that it's a real big conversation to have with the doctor as well.
Yeah, so important. And we have our lipoprotein A guide, and we did a whole interview series with Anahad O'Connor from the New York Times and with Dr. Spar, because then there are people where you could be on a statin and it doesn't work at all. You could even see healthy numbers. So, with that familial, if you've got that family history, you might want that lipoprotein A tested. So one of the things that keeps us doing it more often, and this is where I think the dietitian is uniquely skilled, is it's got to be delicious and it's got to be doable. So what are you mentioned nuts. We've talked a little bit about whole grains. I'd love to, for me, it's just going into lunchtime. So whet the palate. Talk to me a little bit about how we make this feel delicious so that we want to and experience it to be delicious so that we stick with it.
Definitely. I think a lot of people have this thought that if I don't add salt to my food, it's going to be gross. And I am a big believer and lover of all spices. So garlic, onions to kind of base off the beginning of the food is really nice. Using different things like fresh basil versus dried basil, using turmeric, using paprika, using different spices that you like. They're all so high in antioxidants and they all have a lot of therapeutic effects and are amazing. So especially with cholesterol, I'm a big lover of garlic. If you can tolerate it and if you like it, go for it. Cinnamon's also really nice if you want something a little bit more sweeter, even a little bit of vanilla extract. I'm all about flavor in other forms so that you enjoy your food. I would hate for you to feel like, oh, this is so boring, no variety, and it's not like that at all. It's all about giving yourself variety, giving you a lot of flavor and enjoying it. And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, if I don't follow it 100%, then I'm not doing it. And I think that, like we said before, assess where you are now and assess where, and see what little step you can take each day to get you to where you want to go. And if you ever see a stumbling block where, whoa, this will not work for me, or like, I hate oatmeal. I know I'm supposed to have oatmeal, but I hate it. Okay, well, there's other foods that provide the same benefits as oatmeal that you can eat, and making sure that comes into your diet, and making it work for you. You never want to eat and hate what you're eating and just eating because you have to eat it. So I'm very big about making little tweaks to make you happy and excited about, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and the like.
Awesome. Okay, so in conclusion, because I want to make sure we keep ourselves on time, and I have like 15 other questions that I know that I could ask you. Such a wealth of knowledge, so thank you. So you have a 1 and a 3-year-old, and one of the things that so many individuals say, I hear this on repeat, and also the science plays out, is if we could make these choices when we're younger, whether it's avoiding the sugar or getting in more of the fiber or learning to drink water, we all know it's just so much harder to change when we get older, but it feels so hard when we're young. So what are some of the things, whether it's what you personally have been successful with, or if you just have, or you aspire to, what are some of the things you think will make a difference in those early years in creating those habits?
Definitely. So, my son eats better than I do. My 3-year-old loves everything about food.
Great.
It's really important to just get them involved. So we go to the farmer's market, we go to the supermarket. He picks out what he wants to eat for the week. It's very, we have a conversation about food. We make it we don't make it a struggle. We don't make, you have to eat this or you don't have to eat that.
Mm.
It's more, it's family time. We're enjoying it together. We're making food yummy. I mean, and that's a big part, I think, of helping children really appreciate food is having them try it and being open to it. With that being said, I think it's also important that as adults we show our kids kind of what are we eating, because if mommy eats different than them, they may not. Why should they eat that? They want to. They look up to their parents, and I think that that's an important component too. And also just getting them involved. I mean, ever since he was little, we would like put him on the counter, and I would be mixing in front of him. He would then want to mix and touch, and you get messy, you have fun with it, but you still have an appreciation of it. I think food is one of the things that you can use all your senses with, and so let that start young so that people have a good relationship with food. I see too many times people saying like, my daughter will only eat broccoli if I bribe her with M&Ms. But then you bring a power struggle with it, and you don't want that. You want your kid to say, "Where's the broccoli?" And so I think just having it there and really like show like and not try not to be stressed about it, because I think that's a big thing too.
And for the parent, if they are less stressed about it, better for their heart health. So it's a win on that.
Yeah.
Right? Michelle, thank you so much for this. Really, really grateful for your information, and everybody has been seeing across the board while we are talking. But if they would like to get more information from you, they can find you at Entirely Nourished. Also, we love following your Instagram. So over at Heart Healthy Nutritionist, so we've got that, and you were tagged in our post today at the Better Nutrition Program. So make sure if you guys are Instagrammers that you head over there so you can continue to see what she's presenting that's delicious, as well as heart healthy on that part. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend with your family.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.